Hello, friend. You're welcome to this very important discussion on undergraduate project writing with area of interest in economics and other related courses. A lot of young researchers are having challenge on how to navigate around project writing. And this has led to a situation where some people have to contract out their project writing. However, this is not the best for you as someone who desire to learn how to do research. Project writing is an interesting learning experience. Sincerely, it is. If you are willing to learn how to write projects, you will enjoy research because it's an interesting thing, and once you get the skill, it stays with you. So, why do you need to acquire the skill? Research skills are essential generally in life. It helps you for academic success. It also helps you in life generally. It can be applied in any and different areas of life. The skills you gain will help you understand things. It helps you to develop your critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, and improve in your management of time and so many other things. It helps you in business, in your daily life. Research skill will help you. We will be looking at different aspects of research skills with focus, with direction, with idea, with specialty in economics and other related areas. All right, so we'll look at introduction in this session. In the subsequent session, we'll be able to look at issues around literature review, issues around research methodology, and how to present your results, and then how to draft your summary and conclusion. Abstract and reference are also things we're going to consider. So if you've not subscribed to this channel, please do subscribe so that you always get our update. Okay, now when you want to start your research, one of the key challenges people have is selecting topic. And then you see some students or some researchers saying, please help me suggest project topic or research topic. It's not necessary if you learn the skills. One, if you want to select your project or research topic, you need to consider determine your area of interest. I'm a lecturer. Sometimes my students, of in most cases, when I have a set of students to supervise, I usually ask them question. Many of them in economics, I say, where will you want to work? Which sector is catching your fancy? That could begin to define the interest of the individual. All right, so you may want to look at your key area of interest in that your discipline. All right, you may want to quickly see what societal challenges, unanswered questions, curiosity areas that you want to investigate. And then the next thing is that you may want to pick literature, read materials around it to see how to identify gaps. If you see what others have done, you may want to be able to find a niche in what they have not done, and that gives you a direction. Okay, so make your topic as not too broad, but not too narrow, but it should be specific, it should be researchable. And then sometimes your supervisor will be able to guide you in selecting topics. Now, when you have selected your topic and you are challenged to submit chapter 1, which is your introductory session. Introductory session typically has to do with the background of study. It has to show up the problem you want to solve in this research, the research question you set out to solve, the objective of the study, the research hypothesis, significance, and all of that. Now, I need to note here that whatever institution or organization you are working with, most of these institutions, they have their format. So what I have here is a generic format. In where you're operating from, it may be somewhat different. It is requested of you, demanded of you to understand the format required where you are doing your study, so that you follow that study, that format. All right. Now, after you have identified that, the first thing here in that introduction is background of study. And what is this background all about? This background is to give anybody who wants to read this work, the way you start is very, very important. So give it a very strong beginning. You see this beautiful picture, it creates imagination. Look at this second one, it creates imagination. That's a beautiful background. So make sure you start with a very beautiful background. All right? First, try to increase the engagement as much as possible at that stage. And how do you do that? You create a narrative around the main area, the main variable, the main issue you are studying. You may have to cite sources. Okay? Now, maybe I'm studying unemployment, impact of unemployment on economic growth. And then you make that statement, that big statement, that unemployment, for instance, I'm just trying to be careful not to put words in your mouth. But find such catchy statements like unemployment has become an issue of critical research. It has become an issue of critical interest for government. Unemployment has increased in the last few years. Make that kind of statement that will say, and so what? All right, then you create a narrative. The narrative may require you, for instance, if you're in Nigeria and you are studying, the narrative may require you to look at other continents and see what happens there around unemployment. Pick up a story, stories there. Look at within your continent, like Africa, but outside your country, look at issues of unemployment, how it has become a challenge. Pick up stories there, then narrow down to your country. All right, and then you throw up figures while doing this, and in throwing up figures, be ready to cite the sources of your figures. Okay, so while doing that, you try to maintain focus as much as you are trying to create a wide audience. So I look at this background as a big funnel, where you start with a big story, probably outside the region of interest or study. And then you narrow it gradually. If I take you up from Europe, I take you up from Asia, and I narrow it down to Africa. And in Africa, I look at other regions, and I narrow it down to West Africa. And in West Africa, I narrow it to Nigeria. It creates that funnel. All right, so you try to maintain a wide audience, but be sure to narrow down your study. All right, so as much as possible, include historical data. So you throw up the data and cite the source of your data as much as possible. So narrow down your discussion from the wider area to the area of study and make sure it's quite logical. That's all about background of studies. Okay, you may want to look at similar studies and see the way they coin their background, and then see how to coin your own in a way that it becomes very logical and interesting. Once you've done that background of study, one of the things you need to avoid is to make the mistake, to avoid ambiguity, avoid making such statement that is not so clear. Look at this picture here. Someone said, I saw bats. The person you are speaking to could hear, I use a saw to cut bats. The person could hear, you saw a bat flying. The person could hear that you saw a bat standing on its own. The person could hear that you use sword to cut a bat, a bird. Right? So don't make such statement that will put people into confusion. As much as possible, be logical, and then make sure it relates to your team. Don't throw up issues that are outside your team. Poor organization can affect your work seriously. Okay, so try to avoid also what I call conclusive statements while you are discussing your background story. Even in the statement of problem, try to avoid conclusive statement. What do I mean by conclusive statement? Let me show you an example of conclusive statement. All right, look at this matter here. Somebody is studying the impact of foreign trade on economic growth. And then you begin to say in part of your discussion at the background, generally research has shown. All right, research has shown. Okay, that is your point, that positive relationship exists between foreign trade and economic growth. He said generally, research has shown this. Whereas you are trying to check the impact of economic foreign trade on economic growth in your country, and you are telling us that generally this has been established. In other ways, you have concluded your work too early, and that's the big hammer that has killed that work. If that is true, then it is useless investing in that research. Okay, so you need to coin your statements in a way, well, call it political, call it logical, call it tactical, but it's a skill. You coin it in a way that doesn't show that this matter is conclusive, because you are trying to investigate an area in the study. Okay, so avoid conclusive statements. Once you've been able to establish the background of the story, you come up with what we call statements of the problem. The problem this study is solving, you need to clearly identify it. Organize the problem in a very logical sequence. Start off with a general concern, like we said earlier, a general concern. Why is unemployment an issue? Why is foreign trade an issue? Why is women involvement in labor force, why is it an issue? So throw up this matter, make it clear why is an issue. Then when you have made it clear, then you may want to investigate what has been done around this issue. Why is it an issue? You may want to look at why is it an issue in other nations of the world before you narrow down to your area of interest. And then, when you narrow down to your area of interest, you may want to identify what has been done and what has not been done in different areas. Okay? So, you try as much as possible to make sure that you narrow down to the problem. When you show what has been done in different areas, even in your area of interest, what has been done and what seems to be lacking, that creates for you what we call a niche in research. That niche must be created. If your statement of problem is not able to define clearly what that niche is, then that research is not useful. Okay? And that is why we raise this question. What has been done about this, your concern? What has not been done about it? What you want to do? So that's the niche. This requires a level of literature review to understand these areas, what has been done and what has not been done. And then you cite your sources. Sometimes you may need to throw up figures to substantiate your point. Okay? And then the other thing is to now set out your research question. When I know the problem I want to solve here, then I coined problems related to the research problem identified. So a research question it gives you direction in your research. Okay? Is the question this research wants to answer, what people could call your thesis. A clear research question guides your study, so that when that study is concluded, you can be sure that question has been answered. The answer may be yes or, it's not all about yes or no, but that question has been addressed. Okay, so the question should address the concern raised in your statement of problem. If it doesn't address that concern raised, the research work is disjointed. So don't do a disjointed research work. And then, a good research question should be clear and specific as much as possible. All right? It should be clear for easy understanding. It should focus on the scope. Narrow it down to your area of study. For instance, I'm looking at that foreign trade and economic growth. I can't just begin to say that foreign trade, does foreign trade impact economic growth? That's too broad. You need to narrow it down to what you are studying, the scope. All right? Be specific. You shouldn't be so complex. All right? But at the same time, there shouldn't be such a question that will require yes or no answer. For instance, United States, does foreign trade impact economic growth? I say yes or no. Simple. Then that's the end of the work. It should be such that is verifiable, so that you can throw up hypotheses to test that research question. All right? Then the next thing after setting up, in setting up your research question, okay, in your background of study, in writing your background of study, in the statement of problem, I need you to be careful when you copy another work verbatim Otherwise, you run into the problem of plagiarism. If you must copy verbatim, then you must put in quotation mark what you have copied, and then you cite your source. Otherwise, you may have to rephrase that statement in your own words. And when you rephrase the statement, you cite your source. I see many people, young researchers, have issue on when to use the author's surname together with the year of publication, or to put the year of publication in parentheses and then the author's surname outside. Just a rule of thumb: when you are citing the author in a way that the person is making statements, all right, you cite the author's name outside the parentheses. For instance, according to Ojide, by the way, that's my surname, according to Ojide 2024, being nice is a choice. However, it comes at a cost. That's my quotation, right? You like it? Try to be nice, you too. But it comes at a cost. Okay, so that's a statement in my research work. Now, but look at the same statement rephrased here. Being nice is a choice, however, it comes at a cost. Now, I didn't put according to now, so Ojide 2024 comes in parentheses. I hope that is clear enough. So the other one, you are citing the person and then stating what the person has said in a research or somewhere. So only the year will be in parentheses. But when you are making the statement, you want to finish the statement and cite your source, you put the author and the year of publication in parentheses. That is very simple. Okay. Now, when you are done with your research question, the next thing could be, from that question, derive your objective of this study. There are typically 3 types of objectives in research. You may want to study them further. But basically we have exploratory objectives, descriptive objective, and explanatory or causality objective. Now, in explanatory objectives, basically it focuses on trying to gain deeper understanding of a particular phenomenon or topic or issue. Explanatory objective typically aims at identifying new ideas. They use it a lot in literature. New ideas, identifying insights or patterns. Somebody may be studying the pattern of writing of a particular author, or pattern of argument, or how the person is able to prove his thesis. Okay. Now, the second one is descriptive. Descriptive basically, is all about trying to understand the behavior, attribute of population, event, phenomena, and all of that. It may require you to collect data. You collect data, collect it, analyze it in a way that can show you, describe a situation. And that's why it involves a lot of survey, observation, research in archive. And then the third one is explanatory or causal objective. This is basically where you try to establish cause and effect relationship. Like we said earlier, the effect of foreign trade on economic growth, that's cause and effect. All right. The factors influencing women involvement in labor force, that is cause and effect. So it aims at understanding certain events, and how they relate. You look at variables and you want to establish how these variables are related to one another. That is what we do in explanatory objective. Okay. Now, in setting your objective, what should be your concern? It should address specific, problem identified in the research. It should address that. So if I have, for instance, the rule of thumb, if I have 3 questions, I should have 3 objectives. Okay, except there is a question that is a question that is a compound question, which I can split to become specific in my objective. All right, for instance, and that is part of why you avoid compound problem statement, a problem, a question in your study, so that as much as possible you capture each question with objective. Okay, it should clearly show the variables of interest. If I look at your objective, I should be able to identify what variable you are going to use in that study. All right, and then what exactly you want to ascertain between all the variables you have thrown up. Okay, and then it should also suggest the hypothesis of this study. If you have a clear objective, it becomes clear what your hypothesis will look like. And that is part of why we want to now look at hypothesis of studies. Many times people run into confusion. Should I use S or should I use ES? Now this is plural, this is single. So now what is the objective here? We are looking at, hypothesis here is a statement of expectation or prediction that will be tested by that research. For instance, you are looking at this bulb connected to this book, and you are saying the lifespan of this bulb is 3 months. Okay, so you that have produced it, we now subject it to research. We gather all of them and begin to do our research and all of that, and we could take records when each of them stopped functioning, and then based on that we'll come to a conclusion whether it's true or false. So we have basically 2 types of hypothesis: the null hypothesis and the alternative. The null is stated in a way that you are trying to show that there is no statistical significance existing. For instance, I could say that there is economic foreign trade has no impact on economic growth. That's my null hypothesis. The alternative becomes the opposite, that it has impact on economic growth. Okay, so to design quality hypothesis, you need to keep your eyes on 3 things. 1, it should be specific. 2, there should be clarity. 3, it should be testable. And that is why it becomes difficult when people put as the objective that hypothesis, or that you want to draft a policy from your research. Is it testable? All right. So the null hypothesis, of course, the how you state it is this way. It has to do that the fact that there is no effect, and then the alternative shows that there is effect. Okay. Now, if you have done that, another key area of interest is what we call significance of the study. To keep it simple, it talks about the beneficiaries. If you conduct this research, who will benefit from it? That's the question you try to address here. Okay, it shows the relevance of your work to a selected group. We call them beneficiaries. So if you are doing any research and it has no beneficiary, nobody will benefit from that research. Friend, that research is useless. Okay, so you shouldn't invest in it. So the beneficiaries could be direct or indirect beneficiaries. These are people that are impacted by the outcome of the study. So to write a compelling significance of study, you should be able to identify what the research problem is. Unemployment has become an issue, and has because it affects productivity, it affects household income. And then why is it an issue? Look at the population that are unemployed. That's significant. That's huge. Therefore, if we do this research, so and so persons could use it, and then you identify the beneficiaries, which by the time your output comes and is utilized, either in policy formulation, either in practice, of course, for future research too. These are beneficiaries. So you identify the beneficiaries of your study clearly. All right. When you have identified that in significance of study, the next thing that remains is the issue of scope. In drafting your scope, as much as possible, there are key areas you need to identify. Scope talks about the general purpose of your study. So you identify the general purpose. This study looks at this, and then you narrow it down to the population or sample of interest. I am studying Nigeria, for instance, looking at foreign trade and economic growth. The same topic, I could look at sub-Saharan Africa. The same topic, I could look at Africa. The same topic, I could look at Africa and Asia. So you identify your population or sample, and then you identify the duration of the study, from which time to which time. And then you identify the topic or the theory in question. If there are key variables that are throwing up, you identify that. And then you may need to also identify your geographical location. So these are things you identified. Even the type of variable could be thrown up here, which are part of the scope you are looking at. All right, and when that is done, you now tell your your audience how you have organized your work, so that it doesn't look so scattered. Look at this picture here. Somebody will look at this and wouldn't know where this to start and where to stop. So that shouldn't be the case in your research work. You organize it as much as possible by telling your audience what you did in first chapter, second chapter, third chapter. And when you have done that, you can be sure you have a good chapter 1 to submit as part of your project or part of your research. Thank you. I see you smiling too. That's very beautiful. So thank you very much for joining us here, and do watch out for the next one. All right, where we'll be looking at the issue around the review of related literature. Have you subscribed? If not, do that. Thank you. Cheers.